What's going on, everyone? You are listening to episode 42 of the Sports on Broadcast, brought to you by Sporting Edge, online at mysportingedge.com. I'm your host, Tyler Edgerton, and alongside me is my partner, Joe Fabiani. Joe, how you doing after a Week 1 win?
I'm doing well, actually. Surviving that kind of good win in a way. But I'm very more. I would say I'm more optimistic at this point.
Absolutely. We will dive into the Week 1 win. But first, this episode, we're going to review the Eagles' first win of the season. We're going to break down what went well and what the Eagles need to improve on. Our surprises and disappointments from the NFL Week 1, make some predictions for Week 2, and then finally dive in to the Eagles coming up against Kansas City. So let's start off with the Eagles' road win, and let's just get your thoughts in general.
Yeah, I mean, I thought, I as we talked about last week, we saw get into more of a rhythm. The defense was absolutely dominant. Kirk Cousins couldn't get comfortable at all. Tyler's boy, he couldn't get comfortable at all.
That goes back like 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, the receivers for Washington, they clearly don't have the chemistry down as well as Pierre Garçon and Deshaun had with Kirk Cousins. So that was huge for the Eagles, especially after losing Darby. But yeah, I mean, overall, very, very good game. It was more of a big team effort. It wasn't. I felt like there were some things they can improve on, but it's Week 1, and they're not going to be a finely tuned machine at this point. I mean, after all, we're going into Week 2, and the Patriots are 0-1. So that tells you all you need to know about Week 1 in the NFL.
Yeah, definitely a lot of season to go. Let's. I forgot to say off the top that you guys can join us by commenting on our Facebook Live or Periscope stream. You can tweet us at SportingEdge1 or simply text us any questions you may have to the SE Radio hotline at 267-404-MYSE. Want you guys to join in just with any general question you have or any comment, and we'll try and include them into the show. For me, I just thought the game was kind of sloppy overall. Good win, good first win on the road, but much like you said with Kirk Cousins and his wide receivers, it was kind of the same thing with the Eagles wide receivers. Carson Wentz kind of leaned on Zach Ertz and Nelson Aguilar the most. He missed Torrey Smith over the top a little bit, and just trying to build that chemistry with Alshon Jeffrey, who could have had 2 really nice plays. I like what you said about LeGarrette Blount. I thought I saw him, 2 or 3 times kind of get ankle tackled, and I feel like if he broke through the hole there, he would have had 15-yard gains easily. So they do need to get the running game going. I thought the play calling was iffy, but they came out with a win, and the defense took over in the second half. And there was a point in the game where the Redskins were up 14-13, and you're going, as an Eagles fan, oh boy, here we go again. But I thought the defense really clamped down, and after that, it was kind of just a joyride. I mean, they kept turning the ball over. They were getting to Cousins on the blitz, and that would be kind of what I would think was the best part of the game, is that Jim Schwartz got the memo, started blitzing, and it kind of took off. We saw the defensive front that we expected.
Right, yeah, I completely agree. The defense was aggressive, and that's something that we talked about a lot last year, and not really understanding as to why they weren't bringing a lot of pressure. They had great pressure in this game. Against a decent offensive line. It's not like they have a subpar offensive line. They have a few returning starters and an all-pro on the left side, and Trent Williams, who our first-round rookie Derek Barnett had some trouble with. I know a lot of people were asking where Derek Barnett was this game. I promise you he played. There were a few plays where he got into the backfield, but he looked overmatched at times. But yeah, I mean, overall, great to see the pressure from the defensive line. Even the linebackers, Michael Kendricks and Jordan Hicks, were flying around, and Brad made a nice few plays. He's got hands of stone, though. He needs to catch that interception that next time. He dropped one of those. But and also for me, when Darby went out of the game, I was really paying attention to Jalen Mills. I've been really up and down on Jalen Mills. I've wanted to believe in him. He was inconsistent last year. Obviously, he's a rookie. But going into this game, hearing that he was, the most improved player in training camp from Jim Schwartz himself, I really think that puts some pressure on Jalen Mills, especially now after Darby going out with the injury. And he stepped up in a real big way, had that clutch interception. Granted, on a really poor throw, but he was still in the right position to make it happen and really secure that victory for the Eagles.
Yeah, I even thought Patrick Robinson wasn't really all that noticeable. So that was
Right.
good as well, especially we'll get into Darby's injury later on, especially when we look forward to Kansas City, because that's going to be a big factor. But I think Robinson and Mills kind of held their own. They did get beat once, but it was incomplete to Terrell Pryor in the end zone. So we'll see where it goes. For you, if you can nail down one thing that specifically went well and one thing that needs to improve, what would you say it would be?
Uh, I would say the one thing that I was really impressed with was how Brandon Graham came out and played. There was a lot of questions in the offseason with him not having the sack totals that people think he should have had. I believe he only had 5.5 or 6 sacks last season, and he was grading out high on Pro Football Focus, and people were talking about him. And there was even some backlash about him being one of the top-rated defensive ends in Madden. People saying, "Who's Brandon Graham? He's not that good of a player." But I mean, he came out, had 2 sacks, had a great game, was in the backfield, causing havoc, getting tackles for loss. That's something that I think the Eagles have sorely missed over the last few years, and really having that defensive line, coming into themselves, and you can see that they do have one unit that is going to put fear in the other team when they have to play the Eagles in that defensive line. So I mean, seeing Brandon Graham play the way he did, and Timmy Jernigan getting a sack, and Fletcher Cox had a nice game. That's really something that I think they can build off of. Disappointment has to be the running game. I know Jason Peters got nicked up, but that's no excuses. Next man up. Lane Johnson has gone to left tackle a number of times now to fill in for Peters when he's gotten injured. Big V, another bad game against the Redskins when he was filling in. It's just I understand that it's the first game of the season, and maybe the running game won't get going, but the running game hasn't been doing anything in the preseason and now carrying into the regular season. So that's definitely a cause for concern, especially when you're going to have to play against teams who have good offenses you have to keep the ball from and pound the rock with LeGarrette Blount. So that's something they have to get better at.
Yeah, I agree. That's what I wrote down for my thing that they need to improve on. The other thing, and I don't want to criticize him because he did have a very good game, but as far as Carson Wentz goes, I would like to see him connect on one of those deep balls to Torrey Smith. I thought he underthrew 2 balls and he overthrew the other, trying to compensate.
Yeah.
But other than that, he was just a Houdini back there. He made some great plays. As far as what went well, I talked about it a little bit earlier. That would be the blitz, but also Nelson Aguilar and Zach Ertz. I think it's awesome that they got off to a good start in 2017. We've seen Ertz kind of come on at the end of seasons where he doesn't necessarily have the touchdowns, but he ends up with 80 catches and close to 1,000 yards each season. So it was
Right.
great to see him get going right away. And of course, I know you're really high on what Nelson Aguilar did. I'll let you talk about that. But 6 catches, 86 yards, got into the end zone. It's just got to build his confidence.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can clearly tell even in his interviews and some stuff that you've seen on you can catch on Twitter from following certain beat writers of the team. They share clips of practice every day, and you can even see that in him just going through drills. His confidence is definitely at an all-time high. We haven't seen that since ever really. I mean, I think he's really only had one other big game. I think it was against Buffalo. I want to say maybe his rookie year. So you really can't look at too many, good things and point at Nelson Aguilar. But I mean, starting the season the way he did was tremendous. And I really felt that he went out there and he felt that he was a good player. Like, he was confident in his ability. And we know that once he gets the ball in his hands, he can be an electric player. It's just a matter of securing the catch. And he was able to do that in this game. I just hope it continues. I mean, he looked, like you said, 86 yards and the touchdown. That was a great touchdown with the Houdini act pulled by Carson Wentz in the backfield. His pocket presence is tremendously improved, and it's actually really exciting to see and really refreshing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Nelson Aguilar, man, if he can keep playing the way he's playing, I think, like we talked about it, I think it was 2 weeks ago, where we thought that Jeffrey and Smith would kind of have a hiccup in the first few games and not really be on the same page, but really get going mid-season, really having that having that chemistry built up, and really get going. And we kind of saw that in this game with Carson looking to Nelson and Zach Ertz. and the guys that he knows right away. Not that he didn't go to those other 2 targets, but they weren't as successful in this game.
Yeah, and I think the game would be, or at least the viewer's standpoint, would be a lot different if Alshon Jeffrey comes down with 1 or 2 of those catches.
Right.
We are going to pick apart the win. That's just what Philadelphia fans do because they're knowledgeable. As far as something else that I thought needed to improve, it would be Doug Peterson's play calling on the screens. This is the thing though, if they work out, you go, wow, what a great call on 3rd and 9. But the one that Carson Wentz threw behind the line turns into a fumble, and the other one was 3rd and deep, and Torrey Smith, it's the lack of execution. I don't necessarily know if it's the play call, but just kind of getting back, that would be that Doug Peterson lines up to go for it right before the 2-minute warning on 4th and 1 when they pounded LeGarrette Blount for 9 yards, and then they line up to go for 4th and 1. They try and draw him off sides, and I was screaming at the TV, take the field goal, go up 5s. That means the Redskins need to score a touchdown to win, and that turned out to be the Brandon Graham sack, strip fumble, and that's where Fletcher Cox ends up scoring. So I thought that was just a big play, and I'm glad Doug Peterson didn't go for that.
Yeah, last year he scared us a few times on those fourth and shorts. But yeah, I mean, that was definitely something that you hope he's really went back and looked at the tape and understood, like, hey, I got to understand better situational football and knowing what I'm calling out there. So yeah, that's definitely a great choice.
All right, let's move into our quick hit topics for this week, and we're going to start off with the biggest surprise and disappointment from Week 1 in the NFL as we get some background music going. Joe, let's start off with yours. We'll start off with the biggest surprise for you in Week 1 of the NFL.
My biggest surprise would have to be the fact that the New England Patriots are 0-1, and not even the fact of that they are 0-1. It's just how just decimated the defense looked, and the fact that they couldn't get any pressure on Alex Smith, and he was able to pick them apart like he was Tom Brady. That was just ridiculous. I couldn't believe it. I mean, yeah, they have some electric guys, and we'll dive into the Chiefs, but their offense, they do have some electric guys on offense, but the fact that New England, who is known for having solid defense, was just completely ripped apart up and down the field. I believe they allowed over 500 yards. The most points and most yards I think Belichick has ever given up. It was insane to watch.
Especially at home.
Yeah, exactly. That never happens to them at home. And you're watching the game, and in the first half, and you're like, wow, all right, this is a great game. Like, maybe these guys are both contenders in the AFC. And then all of a sudden, Dante Hightower gets injured, their star middle linebacker, and the tide just completely changes, and Kareem Hunt takes over the game. Complete surprise.
Yeah, that's a great selection. I actually forgot about it because that was the opening game of the week. So for my surprise, the Rams scoring 46 points. Now I know it's the Colts, and the Colts, to be honest, when Andrew Luck is not on the field, they might have the most decimated roster in the NFL. Even Cleveland, I think, has a better roster kind of put together other than quarterback, but Andrew Luck's not playing. So when he's not on the field, I mean, they were throwing all over the ball. Todd Gurley gets in on the action. Cooper Kupp, a rookie out of nowhere, comes up with a big touchdown. I think he had 75 yards. I was just really surprised at the way Jared Goff came back after losing 7 straight last season. I think he was just ready to put on the big boy pants and go out and get a win, and they did it in that soccer stadium, and they get a win 46-9. There's no way I would have thought. I thought it was going to be a good game. I thought the Rams would pull it off, but to put up almost 50 points on another NFL team in Week 1 was kind of shocking to me. Let's move on to the disappointment, and I'll get yours first, and then I will roll with mine.
I would say, maybe not just one game or one team, but just the NFL as a whole. I just, obviously, like we're huge NFL fans, and it's just like that excitement was there, but I feel like the quality of football really wasn't there. I feel like a lot of teams struggled to really do what they do best this weekend. So I would say overall, I was a bit disappointed with what we saw out of other guys. It seems like, guys are really having a lot of trouble getting, going. And I feel like you can look at the preseason because of that. When you look, some teams really haven't played, all that much live reps together, and I feel like that really showed in the first week of the season.
Yeah, I agree. It'll be interesting to see what our viewers would say is the biggest surprise and disappointment. We'd love to hear from you guys. You can climb in on our live feeds through Facebook and Periscope. My disappointment would be after everything that happened with to the Texans and the Houston area and surrounding areas. I really thought the Texans would come out and just cream their division opponent by 20 points, and the exact opposite happened. Tom Savage came out; he was even pulled out of the game, and the fact that the Texans didn't come out and just go ham, I don't know how to explain it, go ham on the Jaguars. I was really surprised that they were down, I think 20 to nothing or 19 nothing at one point, and Deshaun Watson came in, threw a touchdown. But other than that, there really wasn't much noise to be made out in Houston, so I was surprised by that.
Yeah, and the fact that the Jaguars got 10 sacks against the Texans.
I did not see that. That's incredible.
It's insane.
That's awful, actually.
Yeah, they're really missing their left tackle Dwayne Brown, who's still holding out. You know that is another. I mean, it's one of those where you're like, wow, really? Like you expect the Texans to have a top 5 defense, and they come out and play this way, and you know to even come down again today with Brian Cushing being suspended for 10 games for a second PED violation.
Yeah.
You know, there's
going
trouble
into
in
a Thursday
right
game too.
Right. Exactly.
So yeah, I was just really shocked. I applaud everything they've done off the field for the surrounding area of Houston, but as far as on the field, it just wasn't there, and maybe that was heavy on their hearts, but I thought the exact opposite would happen. I thought they would come out strong. Now it's time to jump into our Week 2 predictions, and we're looking heavily at the NFC East with another game mixed in. Let's start out with the Dallas Cowboys as a favorite going into Denver. What's your thought on these games, Joe?
I actually double checked that when I first saw that Dallas was favored going into Denver. That kind of blew my mind. When you really look at the slop that Sunday night game was on both sides with Dallas and New York, I couldn't believe that's what it was. But you know, I would say I really liked what I saw out of Denver's defense against San Diego. San Diego against Los Angeles Chargers. I'm sorry. Yeah, it's going to take me a year to get used to that. But, yeah, I mean, for me, really what I'm looking at in this game is the fact that, you know, the Denver defense, as good as their secondary is, and I know everyone wants to talk about Von Miller, is they do tend to struggle against the run offense. And, you know, that's what Dallas, I think, will look to exploit against them. You know, when you look at it, you know, that's what you're going to kind of want to do. You're going to want to kind of control the ball in an away game like that. You know, it's going to be one of those games where obviously you're going to want to pay attention to because, you know, it's an NFC East game, and you're going to want to see what your division opponent does. But for me, you know, if I'm picking, obviously, which is what we're doing, I'm going Denver because I just don't understand how you're going to have a team riding off an emotional win like that at home. You know, finishing the game, blocking the field goal. You know, I feel like you're riding high, and you know you're still at home. So I don't understand how Dallas is favored in this game. I really don't know what they saw to see that, but you know, I was shocked when I first saw that.
It's funny, we're always on the same wavelength when we think of these games. I have 2 notes down for this game, and it would be that Dallas controls the ball through the run, and Denver, not that they have a bad offense, but when you look at the way Dallas runs the ball, it's all about clock management. They have a young defense. Their defense isn't the best in the league. They do have a very good defensive coordinator, and they all fly to the ball. But when you run the ball, especially like the Dallas Cowboys do, they're able to control the clock. And what that means is the other defense gets tired while yours does not. And when they throw out the defense on there, they're able to make stops because they're fresh. You know, they're getting Gatorade on the sidelines while Dallas's offense is putting together an 8-minute drive. So when I look at this game specifically, I would tend to ride with the Dallas Cowboys. I can't believe I just said that, but I think the reason is because you look at Denver and they already I think it would be different if they did not have a home opener already. They opened up last week against a division opponent, and they got a big win. I feel like they calmed down a little bit, and that's the reason. You know, I just feel like it would be different if this was the home opener for Denver. So I'm going to take the Cowboys on the road. Let's jump into game 2.
Well, it wouldn't be fun if we agreed on the first prediction, would it?
No, especially when it comes to the NFC East. So these are all big games, and the second game we're looking at specifically because it has 2 very good playoff teams from last year. They met in the NFC East Championship. We have Green Bay after a huge win at home where their defense actually probably did the majority of the work. We have Green Bay going into the Atlanta Falcons on Sunday Night Football. Where's your head at on this one?
My first thought on this game is I can't wait to watch it. You have two NFL MVPs in Rodgers and Ryan. It's a rematch of the NFC Championship game where Atlanta absolutely took apart Green Bay. It's going to be such a great matchup. A lot of people are predicting a high scoring game. Just look at your fantasy leagues. They're really preparing for this to be a high scoring game. I think it's going to be a lot of fun, and it's going to be really entertaining to watch, especially down in that new stadium in Atlanta. I think that's going to be really special for them to open it up down there.
That's a beautiful stadium too.
Yeah, absolutely. It looks amazing. And can we just talk about the fact that they have a Chick-fil-A that is not open on Sundays?
On Sundays, I know. They probably have one Thursday night game and maybe one Saturday game at the end of the season. I guess it's just for their workers. If they have their corporate offices in the stadium, they can go get it during the week. But I don't know what they were thinking there.
Yeah, that's the craziest thing I saw about that stadium. I was like, really? Seriously? Everyone craves Chick-fil-A on a Sunday, and you're going to have one in your stadium, and it's going to be closed.
I know.
But yeah, I mean, realistically, looking at what Atlanta did in the past week, going up against the Bears, who everyone's projecting to be the worst, if not top 3 worst team in the NFL, and they were actually hanging in with Atlanta most of the game. And Green Bay and Seattle was actually a low-scoring affair as well. But I mean, for me, I like Atlanta at home. That's their home opener in that new stadium. You have Julio Jones on turf, which is where he shines, and those running backs shine on turf as well. I really do think that they're going to open that place in a good way and kind of get the ball rolling down there in Atlanta.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you said. New stadium at home. They really didn't click offensively. I mean, they got the win against Chicago, but it wasn't the Atlanta Falcons we were used to at the end of last season. So I think they come home, big night, Sunday night, lights are on, new stadium. I just think it's going to be a close game. I do have a feeling it'll be a high-scoring game, but not until later. I feel like they're not that they're going to struggle, but I feel like they'll move the ball. It'll be a game of field goals, and all of a sudden it turns into a shootout, kind of like it did last year in the playoffs for them. I do like Atlanta at home as well, so I'm going to ride with you on that one. Our final prediction, other than the Eagles, which we will break down fully coming up in just a couple minutes, would be the Detroit Lions, who got a surprising win against Arizona. We both picked the Cardinals last week. The Detroit Lions come in Monday night.
I think we could attribute a lot of that. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Finish your point.
No, go ahead.
No, I would say I think we could attribute that win to the Cardinals unfortunately losing David Johnson.
Big hit.
For what could be, they're saying he won't be back until December. So if you drafted him number 1 overall, like I did in my fantasy league, put him on IR and hopefully he's back for your playoff run. But to lose, the best, offensive weapon, in the third quarter, what are you really going to do at that point?
This one's for you.
What can you do?
What can you do, Joe?
That's right.
That's just bad GMing. No, I'm just kidding. I would have picked them too. So, yeah, all right. So the final game we have for Week 2 predictions would be the Detroit Lions going against the Giants on Monday Night Football. Throwing it to you. Thoughts on the Giants and the Lions?
I love the Lions in this game. I know I ripped apart Golden Tate last week as not being a number 1 receiver, and then he absolutely made me eat my words going off last week, especially in PPR formats. But I just didn't like what I saw from the Giants at all last week. Their offensive line is atrocious, like we talked about last week. They're missing Beckham. Everything that I've read doesn't point to him playing Monday night too. So if they're missing him again, it's an easy Lions win, in my opinion. I really do think that they're going to struggle all year on offense. And, if their offensive line continues to play at the pace that they're at right now, I don't think Eli's going to make it halfway through this season. So, I really think they're doing a disservice to Eli in his later years not having an offensive line solidified around him. And obviously that showed last week with him really not being able to get on the same page with any really of his receivers. And Brandon Marshall didn't even have a catch until the fourth quarter.
This is breaking news, and for everyone tuning into us, I appreciate it instead of watching the Phillies. But Rhys Hoskins,
he's a stud.
Just hit his 17th home run of the season in 33 games. He's a stud, man. This is incredible. All right, back to football. So the way I look at this game, the Giants, they were awful. The offensive line did struggle, and I'm really surprised. Well, I'm not surprised at that, but I'm surprised at how bad they looked without Odell Beckham, and I did not know his status for Monday night, so thanks for clearing that up. It is an extra day for him. Hopefully for them, he gets on the field. I just feel like I don't know, it's a tough game to pick. I'm going to go with the Giants because, again, they're at home. I think they find some renewed energy. Their defense is going to carry them. And the Lions are one of the worst teams in the league at running the ball. And I feel like if they have to throw it, they do have Eli Apple, Janoris Jenkins, Landon Collins. I feel like they have the secondary to kind of stand up. I'm going to pick them to win a very, very close game. So you're riding with the Lions and the Cowboys. I'm with the Broncos and Giants, and we both agree on the Atlanta Falcons. Put it on the board. All right, jumping into our fourth and final topic of the day, we do have the Eagles coming up against the Kansas City Chiefs, who are now heavily favored. It started out as a 4-point game. Now it's up to 5.5, which tells you it might be a Kansas City runaway. But they are playing it Sunday at 1 o'clock, and it's not played on paper. So let's look at it. We're going to jump into the key injuries first. Let's start with the Eagles. We do have Ronald Darby, who did have that dislocated ankle in the first quarter of Washington. Big blow to the Eagles, but not as big as many thought, especially after seeing the injury first person. He is now week to week after they said he was 4 to 6 weeks. Doug Peterson came out and said he's week to week. I would say that he's probably going to miss at minimum 2, especially if OBJ can't come back for week 3. I think they'll rest him another week. But then the other injury that we're looking at specifically would be Caleb Sturgis, who was put on short-term IR for a hip flexor. That means he's out 8 weeks, so the Eagles had to go digging for a kicker. They pick up rookie Jake Elliott, who's a 5th-round pick out of Memphis. He was on the Cincinnati practice squad after not winning the starting job over Randy Bullock. But we do have some stats to break down for you guys. I know Joe has 2 really good ones, so I'm going to go first. And his last 2 years at Memphis, he kicked 85% from 40-plus yard field goals. That was on 26 attempts, and he never missed an extra point in his 4 years at Memphis. Out of 202 attempts, he was a 100% perfect 202 conversions.
Yeah, I mean, I did see a comment from Brian Baldinger, very good source and very good. If you don't follow him on Twitter, go follow him. He breaks down tape. It's amazing. I know I've talked to you guys about it before. Go follow him. He'll show you guys everything you really want to learn. And he's just great at what he does. Really, when he came out and said that the Eagles just upgraded on special teams and bringing Jake Elliott in over Caleb Sturgis, that really made my interest peak up, because obviously you lose your kicker like that for an extended period of time, you get nervous, especially when you're really relying on these guys now, to get you the 3 points, because we know how hard it is to get into the end zone in this league. But everything I've read about this kid, it's rave reviews. He was drafted in the 5th round by Cincinnati, like you said. When you really look at it, you're like, well, why didn't he make the team then? We don't know that. It is the Bengals. I mean, guys do make mistakes, but what I can tell you is that this kid had, on his kickoffs, he had 64% rate touchback, which is very high rate of touchbacks in college football. And also, we can't discredit the fact that he surpassed Stephen Gostkowski's scoring record at Memphis. And for those of you who don't know, Stephen Gostkowski is one of the best kickers, if not the best kicker in the NFL, playing for the New England Patriots, who has Super Bowl rings. So I think that's something that, really is going to, make Eagles fans sit comfortably knowing that Caleb Sturgis is out for 8 weeks, but we did get this kicker who's a young kicker, and at this point, if he kicks well, he could be the kicker of the future.
Yeah, I do like the addition of him. We obviously, well, not we, but the Eagles had to go out and find a kicker, and it looks like this could be an opportunity for the young kid to kind of take over. With Sturgis out 8 weeks, we'll see what he does. I am a little nervous that they are on the road, and if he does need to, if it comes down to a big kick, I'm anxious to see what he does, but I don't think I'll be watching the TV screen when he makes that kick if it's for the win or something like that. But yeah, those would be the 2 key injuries. Another one kind of looking forward to Sunday against the Chiefs would be Jason Peters. You hit on this a little earlier. He had something going on with his groin against Washington, and he went into the half. It happened right before the half. He comes out of the half. He gives it one play, and something just didn't feel right, so the trainers look at him, and he said after the game that he was able to go back into the game, but they want him to be around for the long future. He's a 35-year-old left tackle, and he's really key to keeping Carson Wentz healthy this season. So he said he will be able to go after the game. He said he'll be able to suit up for Kansas City. It was more of just a precautionary thing. When we get to Kansas City, though, they did lose a big piece of that defense and kind of a leader as well. They lose Eric Berry to a torn Achilles last Thursday against New England, and we'll talk about that in a second on how that kind of affects the game plan for the Eagles. As far as two other players that are really key, they're both expected to play. However, I did see Marcus Peters go down. And I think he sat out a series against the Patriots last week. And then Benny Logan is also struggling with a knee injury. So they are expected to play, but those are two key players on the Kansas City defense that we saw kind of tear apart New England. Really, those are three players and three key factors going into this game.
Right, absolutely. I mean, if you watch Thursday night's game, you could clearly see the frustration on Gronkowski's face, the best tight end in football. The fact that Eric Berry was stuck to him like glue and he couldn't do a damn thing about it. It was the first game I can remember that you're watching Gronk visibly upset by the fact that he just couldn't get open. He couldn't get away from Eric Berry. And he's one of the best safeties in the league, and he's had a great comeback story after overcoming cancer and winning comeback player of the year. And it's really unfortunate to see a guy like that in the NFL go down. You don't want to see any of the top talent. I shouldn't say you don't want to see anybody go down, but especially the top talent and the guys that you're rooting for and have such a great story like that. But moving on, it's next man up, and really, you got to see what else they have, and they do have a great secondary other than Eric Berry, like you said, and Marcus Peters, and I believe his first name is Malcolm Mitchell. I could be wrong, but I know it's maybe Terrence Mitchell, but the other corner who did play well against New England. He had a couple penalties, but he was in great coverage the entire night, so that could be a bit tough. But Benny Logan, former Eagle, you'd like to see him get out there and play against his former team and really have LeGarrette Blount chuck stick him a few times would be nice.
Right up the A.
Yeah, and I did see that Jason Peters did practice today, so that's a good sign. I know you said that he's going to play Sunday, but we need him to play the whole game. I'm tired of seeing him get injured and he's out. He plays 2 quarters, he's out the rest of the game. Then you're wondering if he's hurt, is he playing next week? I really feel like this could end up hurting the Eagles in the long run in this particular season because, like you said, he's 35 years old, he's getting banged up, and I understand you want him for the long haul, but you need your left tackle out there protecting your investment in your franchise quarterback, and that offensive line was atrocious, and I think that as a guy of Jason Peters' caliber, he should be able to fight through these knick-knack injuries.
Yeah, they gave him an extension too right before the offseason, right before training camp started. So he needs to be around. I think if he does go out of the game, they really do need to consider switching over Lane Johnson and putting Vaitai on the right side instead of the left, especially against a very good defensive line. You look at Benny Logan, but they also have Tamba Ali and 3 linebackers that are very good and can rush.
Don't forget about Justin Houston.
Well,
he's an absolute beast on the other side.
He is, and Derek Johnson and all of them. But one guy you missed in the secondary for Kansas City would be Ron Parker, who slides in for Eric Berry. He's a very good veteran as well. So it's interesting, both the Eagles and Kansas City have one of their main, if not their best player in the secondary going down this week, and hopefully, each team will try and go after that as a weakness. But kind of getting into the discussion and breakdown, Joe, I'll throw it to you, and I know you have some X factors you want to throw out there, and then we'll kind of talk a little bit more about the game, and then finally give a final prediction.
Yeah, I was thinking about this a lot today, and really when you look at it, I know I alluded to some guys who I thought would have breakout games last week, but when you really look at the Berry injury specifically, we saw the chemistry between Zach Ertz and Carson Wentz last week, and obviously he was able to exploit their safeties and linebackers, and I really think that's what they're going to try to do again this week, maybe try to tack down the middle of the field with Zach Ertz. I think that, if they're able to really get Ertz going, it's going to be it's really going to help them open up the running game, as another threat. But I really like Ertz in this game. I know you just said Ron Parker's a good player, and yeah, he's a good player, he's a good veteran, but he's not Eric Berry. So I feel like you're going to be able to exploit that matchup. And then again on the other side, we know that they have Tyreek Hill, who's extremely explosive. But I actually do like. I think that the Eagles will try to take Hill away, and I'm sure that he will break off one explosive play. But one guy on the other side to watch is receiver Mike Conley. He's tall, he's fast. Former Ohio State wide receiver.
Chris Conley.
I'm sorry, Chris Conley. Mike Conley. I'm thinking of the basketball player. Chris Conley, yeah, he's big, he's strong, he's fast, he can stretch the field. And the Eagles really struggle with receivers like that. I know Terrell Pryor didn't have a great game last week, and thankfully so. He did have a drop in the end zone. I don't even think he located that ball. It didn't even look like he saw where it was. But I mean, I think that's something the Eagles normally struggle with in those big, tall receivers. And I really think that he's going to cause fits for them down the field. So he would be my X factor for them.
Yeah,
that Darby injury is going to be huge. But I do think they're going to be able to take. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, not to cut you off, but I did anyway. You look at Pryor, and yeah, he did kind of have an off game, but he still ended up having 6 catches, to your point about the big receiver.
Right, and we know we've seen that in the past. Even when we started the season or in training camp, we're like, well, we have these small corners. What are we going to do against these big, strong receivers that we have in our division? And then you're going outside of our division now against the Chiefs, and they have one of those guys as well in Conley.
Megatron on Thanksgiving comes to mind.
Yeah, and I think Eric Rowe is 6'1" too,
yeah.
So he had good size, and he's just getting destroyed anyway. But I mean, yeah, he's really my X factor on the other side to watch going against this Eagles defense.
Now that's a very good point. Just kind of getting back to what Zach Ertz, you look at how Eric Berry took away Rob Gronkowski. Thankfully, just imagine what he would do to Zach Ertz. But thankfully, we don't have to go up against him, and it'll be Ron Parker. It's a benefit to the Eagles that they will look to exploit the middle of the field. I think again, kind of like they did last week with Aguilar and Ertz over the middle. Especially with Marcus Peters on the outside covering Alshon Jeffrey. But yeah, I just think it's huge that Eric Berry, to our benefit, is out. Kind of jumping into this game, I think Tyreek Hill is the X factor for them. They line him up as a running back in the slot on the outside, in a 2-back set, 2 tight end set. It doesn't matter. He's always on the field, and to your point, he's probably going to have a breakout play, but you hope it doesn't go for a touchdown, and you try and manage him as best you can. As far as the Eagles' X factor for me, it would be the defensive front. And, they had a big game in the opening against Washington, but you look, and you reference this, you look at the Thursday night game against New England, and they had no pass rush whatsoever. And I feel like if you make Alex Smith move off his spot, he doesn't turn into Alex Montana or Joe Montana or Tom Brady. He looked great in that Thursday night game, and I think Kareem Hunt also will kind of come down a little bit, as well as the entire team. You give Andy Reid 6 months to prepare for the Super Bowl champion, and he's going to come up with a very good game plan. So, credit to them. He does have 10 games to look at this game. He does have 10 days to look at this game. And I actually have a stat for you, and I guess we'll call it the stat of the week. That would be Andy Reid is 8-3 versus former coaches on his staff. So not looking good for the Eagles. I think that the Chiefs will come down a little bit, but they do have the better roster. So as far as a prediction for me, I think it's going to be a very close game. I think the Eagles are going to hang tough on the road, but it's so hard to go into Arrowhead and beat a team who was 11-5 last year. I just think, even though the Eagles have all the tendencies that Andy Reid has because of Doug Peterson coming over, and I'm sure he's talking to Jim Schwartz, on the flip side, Andy Reid and that staff knows Doug Peterson like the back of their hand. So if I'm going final score, I'm going to give it to the Chiefs, unfortunately. I had this as a loss when we did our predictions last week, so I'm just going to ride with that, and I'm going to say it's 20-17. I think the Eagles are going to surprise some people, but eventually come up short.
Yeah, one interesting thing I did see, the over-under on this game is 47.5. So that shows you right there. They think it's going to be a high-scoring affair. I really do think that both teams are going to be able to score in this game. I just think, looking at Kansas City, they are explosive with Hill, and we didn't even touch on Travis Kelce, who's a tight end who can line up as a receiver as well. I think that they're going to have their hands full quite a bit. I I'd be interested to see if they are going to start Rasul Douglas this week. I know there's a lot of talk about that with the Darby injury.
I'm sure he'll be
Or
suited
they're
up.
just going to continue. Or they're just going to continue to run the safeties out like they did last week. So we'll see really what they do. But for me, I do like the Eagles' chances in this game. I really do think it's going to come down to the turnover battle. And I feel like if you can't allow the Chiefs to get up early and you turn the ball over in Arrowhead, the sound's going to be deafening. It's a hostile environment to go into, but I do like the Eagles matchups against the Chiefs defense in this one, and I really think they're going to be able to exploit it. And I know that you said that Andy Reid has a good record against his former coaches, but I just think that having Nick Foles, having Doug Peterson, knowing that offense, and being able to talk to Jim Schwartz, and Jim Schwartz has been in this league a long time. And I really think that this is going to be one of those games that you look at almost like the Steelers game last year, and you're going to have people step up that you really wouldn't expect them to. And, you're really going to see what this team is made of. Now, let's not get crazy and say that they're going to go out here and win 12 games, because I don't think they will. But I just think this is one of those games where, barring anything crazy, I just feel like Carson Wentz has the ability to go out there and win you a game like this.
Wow, I like it, Joe. I think in order for that to happen, they're going to have to get the running game going and stick to it. And you're right, they're going to have to win some tough battles. I mean, you look at Alshon Jeffrey, he's got to come up and beat Marcus Peters, who is an interception machine. Carson Wentz,
he is also, I know he's a great corner, but he is also on the smaller side. So
yep.
I think that you're gonna see them take chances in this game, just like last week. But obviously we saw Jeffrey had two big drops on those plays, which I think 90% of the time he comes down with those catches, and I think you're going to see that happen this week.
Look for them to exploit the middle of the field. We do have one question before we get you guys out of here, and we appreciate you joining us every Wednesday night at 8 o'clock. Tim on Facebook did say, who will cover Hill, Tyreek Hill, and I think that is very important. If he lines up in the slot, I even think that Malcolm Jenkins might come down and cover him. Jalen Mills is probably the fastest corner right now, but it's going to be a little bit of a trouble. What do you think? Who's mainly going to match up on Tyreek Hill, because that is kind of their X factor player?
I would say that's tough. I really don't. Since we've had Jim Schwartz, he's really not that guy that really has a corner, shadow, or receiver. I feel like we're going to have guys pick. We're going to have the guys like play their spots more or less, but I do expect them to, maybe take chips at him, have a linebacker come down, chip him, then have the corner pick him up. I do like what you said about Malcolm Jenkins, but I just feel like in this specific game, you're going to have him cover Travis Kelce like a blanket, because we can't forget about him. And, I really do think that, when you look at it, the Eagles, obviously they're able, for whatever reason, doesn't make sense, but they almost always handle these quick twitch guys, and like I said earlier, they struggle with these big fast receivers like Conley. So I just feel like they're gonna find, obviously, like I said, he's gonna get he's gonna explode, but I just feel like when you really look at it, I think that they're gonna be able to handle him a little bit. I mean, not fully grasp him, but I think that they're gonna be. He's not gonna be the guy that beats you in this game. That's just what I think.
So I have a final score of 20-17. Joe, what do you got?
I actually have 31-27 Eagles.
Wow. All right, well, we'll see how it goes down this Sunday, 1 o'clock. They're in Arrowhead. We will be back next Wednesday at 8 o'clock. Nothing much to say. Go Eagles, and I'll turn it over to Joe. He'll shut it down, and thank you all for joining us this week, and we'll see you next week.
All right, guys, it's always a great time hanging out. Feel free to call in and give me a whole bunch of crap about picking the Eagles over the Chiefs, who just destroyed the New England Patriots, Super Bowl champions. Gives us something to talk about, gives us something to laugh at, and getting a prediction wrong as well. Definitely stay up on what's happening around the league. Obviously we talk Eagles, but we're willing to talk, about whatever game you want. We're very into it. We watch all the other games as well.
And every Sunday every Sunday morning we release our predictions as well on mysportingedge.com. So you guys can go see that. We have a whole crew of about 6 to 7 people chiming in on what they think is going to happen this Sunday. So not to cut you off, but I wanted to throw that in there for any of the viewers.
Yeah, definitely, guys. Head over there and check that out. Like Tyler said, it's always up there Sunday morning for you guys to check out. But all right, guys, as always, great time hanging out. And don't forget to head over to mysportingedge.com for all your latest news articles and updates. Follow us on Twitter. Subscribe to our YouTube page. Check us out. Like Tyler said, we're on Periscope as well. You can find us all